True prosperity is a value for value exchange. The more value you create, the more prosperity you're going to attract. And that is the quote of the day. Welcome back to the Quote of the Day show. I'm your host, Sean Croxton of SeanCroxton.com. Thanks for tuning in to our Finance Friday episode. We talk about all things money mindset. And today we've got our featured speaker, Mr. Randy Gage. Before we get to Randy, I've got a quick story. You probably heard parts of this story before because I tell it all of the time. But back in maybe 2008, I was dealing with some serious money mindset issues. And a friend of mine emailed over an interview of Dr. John Demartini. And this interview was the first thing to really shift my consciousness around money. But that same friend recommended a book. And so I went out and got that book. And that book is by Randy Gage. I have it in my hand right now. It's called Why You're Dumb, Sick, and Broke. Again, why you're dumb, sick, and broke. We talked about reading more books yesterday. This is a book that I highly recommend if you're dealing with any type of money mindset issues. And I learned a couple things from this book. Actually, I learned a lot of things from this book, but I want to talk about two of them. Number one is the fact that I was obsessed with money and didn't really realize it. I thought rich people were greedy and they were obsessed with money. But when I really thought about it, I was like, all I think about is money. That's all day. I just think about my lack of money. How am I going to get this? How am I going to get that? How am I going to pay for whatever? How am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to get new shoes? How am I going to take this girl out? On and on and on. I just couldn't. 90% of my thoughts were about money and lack of money. Another thing I learned from Randy's book, as well as other books since then, is the fact that I create my own economy, that you create your own economy. You see, the word recession doesn't really mean a whole lot to me personally. It doesn't, right? I perceive it in a completely different way than most other people do. Now, if we take it back to Dr. John Demartini and his work on values, he always talks about how if you do not have a high value on money, wealth, finances, then you are very likely not going to ever have financial freedom. You're very likely going to be impoverished or just be barely getting by because since it's low in your values, it's just not that important to you. Whereas somebody else, like myself, who holds money in high value, I'm going to have more money because it's important to me. And I'm always going to be looking for ways to provide value to others in exchange for money. So let me show you how this relates to a recession. If you have a low value on money, what you see is a set of options. And what I mean by that is you work in a particular industry. So your options are you can do within the economy X, Y, and Z within that industry. So when the recession comes along and that recession impacts your industry, it wipes out your set of options and you go, oh my gosh, now what am I going to do? Now, someone who has a high value on money, finances, wealth, they don't see a set of options. What they see are opportunities. And they see opportunities for providing solutions for problems. People who earn the most money are the ones who are out there solving problems. And when you think about it, when do people have the most problems? They have the most problems during a recession. Now, some people will listen to me and say, you're taking advantage of people during a recession. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about there are people out there who need help with their problems. They need solutions. They're going to look for solutions somewhere. Why not you get out of your set of options and be the one to see the opportunity to provide the solution for their problem? People make lots of money during recessions. And I love the story that Randy talks about in this clip about real estate, and you're about to hear it. I've been talking for way too long. I don't like my intros to be this long, but I get really fired up about this topic. I'll see you on the other side. Here's Randy.
Safe is the new risky. You want to create wealth today, you have to take charge of your own economy. You have to create your own prosperity. You have to be the boss. Now, he was talking even this morning, he was talking about, the negative news in the economy and all that. This year is the best year I've ever had. It's better than last year, which was the last best year I ever had, which was better than the year before, which up to that point was the best year I've ever had. I've had the best year I've ever had for about 17 years in a row. I'm on a vicious cycle of prosperity. And you know why? Because I don't outsource my prosperity to the economy, the government, the news network, the data sphere, the perception. I don't care what that economy is. I make my own economy, and you have to make your own economy. So next time someone says, what are you doing about the recession? What are you doing about the economic downturn? What are you doing? You say, I choose not to participate in it. That's my mantra. I choose not to participate in that stuff. Because here's what we know. For every challenge, there is a corresponding opportunity. We know some of the greatest wealth created in the last century was created during the Great Depression. And whatever the biggest challenge you can find offers the biggest opportunity that you could find. The real estate bubble. Oh, it's collapsing all. Reading the paper a couple of months ago, there's a guy, you know what he does? He goes and he buys foreclosed homes from the banks, and he sells them back to the owner that they're foreclosing on. So the guy buys a house, right? He bought it at the peak of the market. It was valued at $250,000. What's it valued today? 110 or something like that. What does the bank sell it for? 30, 40, whatever. So this guy, and they're telling the guy, okay, yeah, you can't pay the mortgage, we're throwing you out of your house, right? But they're still in there while these proceedings are going on. So this guy goes and buys the house for $40,000, let's say, from the bank. Then he calls you up, who's being foreclosed on, and says, how'd you like to keep your house? How about if I resell it back to you for $80,000? Because the $80,000 is now a payment that you could afford and you could stay in your house. And they say, wow, that's great. We don't have to disrupt the family. We don't have to move the kids. We don't have to change school. And we can keep our house and start to build equity again and restore our credit and still live in our dream home. And this guy makes $40,000 without ever even really taking possession of the property. Is that ingenious? It's just an opportunity created by a challenge. All prosperity is a value for value equation. And prosperity is infinite. All true prosperity is infinite. Because remember, money is just a meme, a mind virus. A mind virus is something you get programmed. You get infected with a virus, just like your computer on the hard drive gets infected. Your mind gets infected with a virus. There's mind viruses going around all the time. This was the source of, the topic of my last book. What are all the mind viruses about? Money is bad. Rich people are evil. It's spiritual to be poor. It's noble to be poor. Those are just mind viruses. We get infected by organized religion is one of the guiltiest parties. Governments are one of the guiltiest parties. And of course, what I call the data sphere. TV, radio, internet, movies, newspapers, magazines, email chains, social media sites. They're just infecting you with these mind viruses. Well, money, if you see this $100 bill, this is just a mind virus. This has no intrinsic, inherent value in and of itself. It's just, particularly in the United States, because there's not, back in 71, President Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. At that point, money still had a value because there was a corresponding value of gold in Fort Knox. The day that changed, this became worthless. So the government says, this is worth $100. But what's the truth? There's 10% inflation. Now it's worth 90 cents. Another 10%, it's worth 80 cents. Now we're going to adjust the consumer price index because the inflation is going too far, and now we don't want people to know how much it really costs to live. So we'll take out things like bread and milk and eggs and gasoline and things that people buy all the time, and we'll replace them with cars or rakes or lawn blowers or whatever things so that and now we lose another 10% and another 10%. And then that's the real value of that. It's worthless. Now, of course, I'm hoping somebody this weekend is going to do a session on precious metals, gold, silver, platinum, because that's the only real form of payment in the world, because that can't be done on a printing press. So true prosperity is a value for value exchange. The more value you create, the more prosperity you're going to attract. And the bigger the challenges are, the greater the opportunities for your prosperity. So, but you've got to change your thinking. You've got to stop saying, okay, well, they say it's a bad economy. They say it's a tough time, or I should go to school, or I got to work for a big company, or you got to know somebody, or you got to have money, or you got... No, all the rules are changed. You take Microsoft, right? One of the biggest, companies in the world, worth billions and billions of dollars, right? This was started by a couple of college dropouts in their dorm room. And you know what? Right now, in some college dorm room somewhere else, there's a couple of kids with nothing but a couple of empty pizza boxes that have the next idea that will make Windows obsolete.